What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the Red Cedar Podcast. It's Scott here. Back to recap a very underwhelming and underachieving year for Michigan State basketball when we came into the year with such high expectations. And on a personal note, probably the worst sports year of my lifetime. This season did nothing to help that, especially with everything that happened coming off a horrific football season here in East Lansing. But so let's just jump back. We'll start from the beginning, jump back to October, really. Preseason rankings come out. Michigan State is a top 5 team, as we expected after last year's tournament run, and with the guys that were returning, and they came into the year ranked number 4 in the country. So here in East Lansing, we already have the football season going off the rails, not even through week 2 in September, and the covers are still off the pools. You can still jump in Lake Michigan without getting hypothermia, and we were already desperate for basketball season to get started here. Michigan State opened the season versus James Madison, who, yes, in hindsight, was a really good team. Well-coached, good players like Terrence Edwards and TJ Bickerstaff, but as a top 5 team against any mid-major, you shouldn't drop that game at all. But credit to James Madison. They barnstormed into the Brez opening night and beat Michigan State 79-76. That was kind of like, ooh, like, was this just a blip on the radar, or, a blip on the season of what could be, what was, hoped to be a special Final Four, Izzo's second national title type season, and we're starting out like this. While MSU did shoot 1 for 20, which is 5% from 3 in that game, surely it's got to improve, right? But the next game against Southern Indiana, you shoot 1 for 11, 9% from 3. Really all year long, the 3-point percentage for Michigan State just slowly increased over the next couple months of the season, but it never returned to last season's impressive 3-point shooting numbers that we saw, where you had 3 guys shooting over 40%, and as a team shot 39.5% from 3, whereas this year you only had 1 guy, Trey Holloman, shoot over 40%, but it looked good in the middle half of the year shooting the ball to get you up to 35.9% as a team from 3. Rounding out the non-conference schedule, first of all, I don't even know if Tom would have scheduled James Madison and, looking a little ahead here, Indiana State, if he knew they'd be as good as they were. Obviously, Tom likes to schedule the toughest schedules that he can. Can't see him right here, but I have across here, anyone, anytime, anywhere. The mantras of this program, what he built it on. But those are, 2 games mixed with some of the other opponents we saw that I don't know if they get scheduled, and that seems like a common, thought around everyone in the fan base this season, if those games even got scheduled, if he knew that they were as good as they would be. I remember going into the James Madison game, he said, this is going to be this isn't just a walkover game. These guys are going to be tough. And then obviously by the time we got to the Indiana State game, we knew how good Indiana State was, and that would be a tough game, especially how we had played the first, month and a half of the season. But hindsight's 2020. But the rest of the non-conference schedule, you lost to Duke in the Champions Classic. You beat Butler with the Pierre Brooks return game to the Breslin, which they were okay this year, not great. They finished towards the bottom of the Big East. You lost to Arizona and Palm Springs on Thanksgiving, a game with 3:58 to go. You were up 3, and Arizona promptly closed the game on an 11-2 run. This would be a theme of the year, so hold on to that note there. Oakland, which obviously just had a nice tournament run here, upset Kentucky in the first round. They turned out to be a good team, and you beat them by 17, but every year they give you your best shot. There's been very few games against Oakland where it's been a complete blowout. Then Indiana State, which was a very good team, should have gotten the tournament. You held on and beat them by 12 the day before New Year's to close out 2023. But the big one came in mid-December at Little Caesars Arena in Detroit by absolutely drilling Baylor by 24 points. And it frankly wasn't even that close. It was up towards 28-30 most of the game. That was the peak of what this team could be. Everyone clicking, Tyson was cooking, defense was rolling, just everything we thought we were getting leading up into the season, you got in that Baylor game. However, if your arguably best game is in December, there's only one other game this season, which we'll get to, that I could argue to be this team's best game. That comes in December, it doesn't bode well for the rest of the way. So now jumping into conference play, you drop the 2 early games that you play in the conference slate in early December, getting obliterated by Wisconsin at home, specifically in the paint, then letting a 3-point lead with under 5 minutes to go at Nebraska. On the road, slip away to fall to 0-2 in conference play for the first time since the 2020 COVID year. When the calendar turns to January, that's usually when Michigan State will kind of pick up some steam. They usually play a difficult November and then beginning of December as well, with the 2 conference games that they switched to a couple years ago in there. And then over Christmas break, and you play the directional schools, or Oakland, which, as we just talked about, they that's usually a rough, a tougher game. They give you your best shot, and that's kind of a grinded out game. But overall, you play directional schools, or smaller schools over Christmas break. So you can kind of work on yourself a little bit. The guys are getting settled in. The freshmen are starting to put 2 and 2 together here. And then when the calendar flips, you get a head start on hopefully bolstering that conference record after you're feeling good by yourself for that stretch from the middle of December to the beginning of January, start of the new year. This year, that did not happen. You blow out Penn State to open the year at home, but then you drop 2 straight on the road to fall to 1-4 in conference play. Now you're looking up in the standings, and from the second week of January, you need to now basically run the table to even have a shot at hanging any regular season banners, which is not what we expected coming into the year. Not everyone picked this team to win the conference this year, but you expected it to be a 2-horse race between Michigan State and Purdue this year. By the second week of January, that was out the window. Now, the regular season Big Ten slate wasn't all bad. There was some good moments too. There was a lot of grinded out moments. Even if the totality of the season wasn't to MSU standards, there was still some nice moments throughout the season, right? You beat the school down the road twice, and that hasn't happened since the 2018-19 Final Four season, where you beat Michigan 3 times in 23 days or something like that. I forget what it was. It was over a course of like 3.5 weeks that amazing team beat that school down the road 3 times and hung 2 banners. Beat them and hung 2 banners. Man, what a time to be alive. Then the only other game that you can put up against that Baylor game to be argued as this team's best performance or game of the year is beating 10th ranked Illinois at home in a must-win situation, which brings up another point. This team seemed to play its best with their backs against the wall. And let me tell you, being in the building, being in the Breslin for that matchup against 10th ranked Illinois, you could tell the vibes were there. I think, the Michigan game, yes, but Michigan obviously was kind of down this year. Obviously, we were, struggling as well. It didn't have the same juice that, I was fortunate enough to be at that 2018-19 senior night game between Michigan State and that school down the road, where, it was 2 top 10 teams playing, banner, trophies, everything on the line, senior night, for a 1 seed in the Big Ten tournament, everything on the line. I've been in those, lucky enough to be at that game and some other great, Michigan State-Michigan rivalry games, and this just wasn't it. Obviously, it's against your rivals, so it was a great atmosphere, but I gotta say the Illinois game probably was the best atmosphere game in the Breslin Center this year. You could tell you walked in, and I was nervous. I was freaking out. I was sweating all morning leading up to the game. So I got there pretty much right when the doors opened, and I just sat there, just watched everything. But handed out the white towels, had the towels going, everything. Great atmosphere. But this team did seem to step up with their backs against the wall for the most part this season. Yet the Baylor game, the Illinois game, as we just talked about, and we will touch on it later, but Minnesota in the Big Ten tournament as well, which essentially secured the tournament streak continuing and securing them getting into the NCAA tournament. Obviously, things would get a little bit sweaty on Selection Sunday, but we'll jump back to that a little bit later for a second. You don't take moral victories in this program, but you saw this against Duke, Arizona, Illinois on the road, and then Purdue twice as well, once in the Big Ten tournament. But all of these were losses, but in all those games, Michigan State didn't get blown out. They showed up, but again, you don't take moral victories in this program at all. But that's something to, of note from what happened in the season. But it was the consistently inconsistent play that Tom alluded to all year long that did this team in. The season was plagued with, feel good 2-3 game winning streaks. There was even, a stretch where you won 8 of 10 in the middle of, say, January, February area. But then you coupled that little stretch 2-3 game winning streak with the backbreaking loss that just didn't make sense. And then you go on another little, 2-3 game winning streak, and then a backbreaking loss that just doesn't make sense. And then, as we said, we'd get back to the inability to, and the consistency to be able to finish games this year. There's 7 games in which you had the lead in the second half, a lot of the times late in the second half, like 5 minutes under, and you lost all 7. Like, that just cannot happen. If you win 4 of those games, you're over 20 wins in the regular season. You're probably fighting for a 4 or 5 seed in the tournament. You probably have a double bye in the Big Ten tournament, obviously. And you would have hopefully built up some better habits in closing games throughout the season to maybe have a different result in first the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament. Plus, obviously, if the domino effect, those things happen, you have a better draw in the NCAA tournament, and you don't draw 1 seed in the second round. But listen, just kind of the warts of this team. This was Izzo's worst rebounding team since 2003, 2004. You didn't shoot the 3 ball all too well. You struggled from the free throw line for pretty much all year. A lot of these games, Minnesota game on the road specifically, if you make 3 free throws, you win that game. And you missed... you were 6 for 17, I believe, that game. Just still burned in my memory. All the free throws in the barn that you miss. Okay, this video is meant to try to get over this season and recap everything that happened, but yeah, okay. But obviously, well documented the inconsistency of our centers as well, and not having a guy to just throw the ball to, and not even just go get a basket, but just a guy that you threw the ball to, pass the ball out of the post, or at least provide some attention and some eyeballs to get some cuts and some action off the ball. Just not having the inconsistency from that position, and the ability to take the pressure off the guards and wings so they can get to the lane and whatnot. In terms of back cuts, as we said, dribble drives, whatnot. Off-ball movement and such. Unfortunately, as well, we only saw one player take a leap from last year, really, from the summer, that is. Obviously, we saw guys, throughout the season got better. Freshmen, obviously, Book, we saw get better throughout the year, most notably. But the guy that really made the biggest jump from last year over the summer into this year was Trey Holloman. He had a good year, started out really hot, added that 3-point jumper that he didn't have last year, and, was kind of questioning, like, hey, where does Trey, kind of fit, especially with Jeremy Fears coming in. You still have A.J. Hogard, A.J. Hogard and Trey Holloman coming into the year. Neither of them were like, oh, these are, big, like, 3-point shooter, guys. And really, Jeremy isn't a 3-point shooter at this point in his career either. So it was like, where's Trey's going to fit in? Like, he's very efficient, plays good defense, but, what's he going to bring to this team? That was kind of the question going into the year. And he proved everyone wrong and proved himself right, because he added that 3-point jumper in the offseason and was dynamic off the bench for this team. And he helped save this team in a lot of games and provided stability off the bench. Carried over that amazing assist-to-turnover ratio from last year as well. But we didn't see jumps or big enough jumps from the other guys on the team that we thought we would. I guess I will say we can say 2 guys took a jump, but I really don't even want to call it a jump. I think it was just the availability of this player and being healthy, and that's obviously talking about Malik Hall. He was finally healthy. He helped carry this team. Him and Tyson, who Tyson was, I don't want to say he didn't make a jump, but he was, himself. He's the Tyson we saw for pretty much all of last year and flashes the year before, and then, he was who he was this year. Seemed like he was a little dinged up with an injury, but he still went out, got buckets every night, was amazing on the defensive end. But Malik, over the course of his career, he's unfortunately just had, kind of nagging and, injuries at wrong times that he hasn't been able to fully show his true potential. And thankfully this year, his senior year, he was able to be healthy, was able to be out there. And, especially towards that middle part of the season where it seemed like Tyson was a little banged up, his volume and efficiency maybe took a hit. He still was able to go out and get his, but just not as efficient as, say he was before. Malik was really able to be consistent, flip that senior year switch, and carry the team to close the year, really since the calendar turned to January. Very consistent outside of 2 games at Northwestern and at Minnesota. Northwestern was the zero burger, and then Minnesota a lot of missed free throws for Malik. But for Malik, yes, but for the team as a whole at Minnesota. But he is one of the main reasons that this team made the tourney. It wasn't quite the Aaron Henry type of run because Malik still had Tyson showing up every single night. AJ showed up a handful of nights. Jaden Akins showed up a handful of nights as well. There was enough nights that other guys showed up that, that Aaron Henry run to extend the streak in 2020 was just something that I don't think we'll ever see again. But the problem, which alludes to what Tom has said all year, and the point I've harped on here as well, kind of just in a different way, is you can never get the 4 main guys, AJ, Tyson, Jaden, Malik, that you needed to get going to have a successful season, and who the season was kind of dependent on achieving the goals that we hoped for, during the summer and this fall coming into the season. You can never get them all going on the same night outside of maybe 3 to 4 times this year. So then you go into postseason play here. Well, first off, you close the year, you somehow squeak out a senior night win against Northwestern. That was just horrific to sit through, but you somehow get it done, and then you blow a late lead at Indiana again. One of the 7 games we talked about. That was a stressful end to the regular season, but then to really, again, backs against the wall, you need to win a game in the Big Ten tournament to secure a spot in the NCAA tournament, and you come out on Thursday, not getting a double bye. You come out on Thursday, and you beat Minnesota, which all but locks you into the Big Ten tournament, and then you compete against Purdue on the Friday, right before Selection Sunday. You take a tough loss, but as I said, you played Purdue tough 2 times this year, once in the regular season and then on the Friday in the Big Ten tournament. But then just some crazy stuff, one of the crazier days in, college basketball in, the last handful of years happens on Saturday night, and then all of a sudden you're sweating, Saturday night and into Sunday waiting for Selection Sunday. But you get in as a 9 seed. Unfortunately, you beat Mississippi State in the first round. Solid performance all the way around. Some good performances from, a lot of the guys. And then you're feeling good going into North Carolina. It seemed like North Carolina was, one of the only and, maybe a vulnerable 1 seed. That was probably the 1 seed that you wanted to play. If you had to play a 1 seed at all, especially this early in the tournament. But it just wasn't there. You can watch the recap on the channel. We talked about it. Not just gonna go over it again, but just didn't have it that night. You had it for stretches, but just didn't have it for the full 40 minutes that you need to win a game in the tournament, especially against a really good team like that. A 1 seed. Overall. So going into the summer, you're losing Steven, you're losing Davis Smith, you're losing Malik, and you're losing Tyson for sure. Out of eligibility, I think Davis might have eligibility left, but I think everyone is going. I think those 4 are for sure gone. I could be wrong about Davis having availability or eligibility left, but anyway, so the 2, AJ and Maddie, they do have an extra year of eligibility left, if I can talk. They could use to come back. So they both were asked after the season ended. And a couple times towards the end of the year, but the latest answer after the season was they were undecided. Here's where I stand on this, and this is just my pulse of the situation. Obviously don't know anything, just my view of the situation from, watching different press conferences and, just kind of reading the room. I don't think AJ comes back. It doesn't add up for either side, really. For AJ, he obviously tested the draft waters last year. Came back in this year, and I got the vibe he was kind of out the door after this year, kind of no matter what. No bad blood, just, kind of ready to move on to the next chapter. And then, you turn the page from the program side. Doesn't really make sense because you obviously do have five-star Jeremy Fears, who obviously, unfortunately, had his freshman season derailed and cut short when he was shot at home over Christmas break. And, thankfully, he seems like he's, recovered well, rehabbed well, and is back on the court. And, even towards the last couple of weeks of the season, he was doing warm-ups with the team the last couple weeks of the year, and said he should be at full go with all basketball activities by the summer, I believe. But so you have Jeremy, who he's going to start, no doubt in my mind. He's going to be the starting point guard next year. But we saw flashes that first month and a half that he was out there, and now you go another full summer. He's going to be your starting point guard next fall. So it just makes sense for both sides to move on, I believe. Again, this is just my opinion and, kind of read on the situation throughout the year. Maddie, this is just a gut feeling. I know some people believe he might come back. He was just kind of pushed out of the rotation by the end of the year. He was playing, 4 to 8 minutes a game at the end of the year. Then obviously you add in Xavier Booker, going to be playing more next year as we saw his minutes increase towards the end of the year. Then obviously another summer, hopefully you add another 20, 25, 30 pounds on him. And, get better defensively and, all aspects of the game. Xavier Booker is going to be playing more. And then, so he'll have his minutes increase even more. And then you still have Carson Cooper and Jackson Cole on the roster as well. Plus, MSU has at least looked at a transfer big in the portal. Doesn't mean they will actually get one or actually for sure offer and go after one. But they have looked. Makes sense to just move on from both sides, I think. But I do see a world where, let's say Michigan State doesn't want to go after another center in the transfer portal and Maddie wants to come back as well and they want him back for, limited role, limited minutes. I could see a world where he does come back for, certain situations. And then the incoming freshmen. You got incoming freshmen Kurt Tang, Jace Richardson, and Jesse McCullough. Now, if we are mathing right here with the scholarships, they have 8 scholarship returnees. That is, if Jaden Akins comes back as well. I'm obviously hoping for 1, and 2, kind of assuming that he hopefully comes back. So that'd be 8 scholarship returnees. And then you have 3 incoming, the 3 incoming freshmen. So that puts you at 11. So you got 2 spots for the allotted 13 scholarships available. My opinion, and most people's opinion, is you need a transfer wing. Ideally, someone with good size that can rebound and shoot the ball well. I think that's most important. If that happens, then you can slide Jaden Akins back to the 2. Plus, which some people think is even more important than a wing, I do not, but some people do, is grabbing a transfer center. Now, there is some names out there. Yale transfer Danny Wolf, who averaged 14 and 10. He is a 7-footer. As far as wing transfer, Javon Hadley does have a meeting on Monday, which this video will come out after. He already had the meeting, I believe, with Michigan State and Iowa State staff. It seemed like for a while he's an Iowa State lean based on the stuff we've seen out there in terms of the Twitter universe and the message board universe. But he averaged 12, 6 rebounds, 3 assists last year. Both would be good additions, I think. But if you can land Hadley or a different high-profile wing, then for me personally, it doesn't have to be someone that you have to throw the ball down to and, go get 12, 14 points a game. I just want a 7-footer who, even if they only play 8, 12, 14 minutes a game, but just comes in with a presence, snag 8 to 12 rebounds, in some extended minutes, block a shot or 2, and just have some semblance of an offensive threat to help open up the offense more. But the main thing that needs to be addressed this offseason is rebounding and shooting. Some of that can be addressed on the roster with, more consistency from Jaden Akins getting back to how he shot last year. Trey Holloman, we saw him improve his shooting, only player this year to shoot over 40%. We can see that with an increase for, him in terms of more volume. So him just working on his shot, get more refined with that. And then Garrick Norman, who obviously redshirted this year. He'll be playing next year, and he's known as a shooter, kind of Matt McQuaid 2.0, kind of that mold. So I'll be excited to see him in the rotation next year as well. But now, I would love to go over. I mentioned this a couple weeks ago in a recap video. Well, let's just briefly go over what I would hope the roster will look like this fall. as like I said, I had this drafted from a couple weeks ago, and really it still holds true today. Didn't I kind of switched like two positions, one position, just switched guys, and I think you guys will understand why and probably have the same opinion if it's this group of players that I'm referring to that is here. So starting, Jeremy Fears, Jaden Akins, transfer wing, Xavier Booker, and then I got Jackson Kohler as starting center. And as Graham Couch did say on the Locked On Spartans podcast, that, you know, the staff did like what they saw with Xavier Booker and Jackson Kohler. They thought offensively that was kind of a dynamic duo that they liked in the summer and the fall before Jackson's injury that kind of derailed his whole year. So I think they go that. Obviously, Jackson, you know, isn't the best defender. He does okay on the boards, not great, but you hope Book grows into that more. Obviously, Book is, you know, bigger than him, but Book fits better at the 4 because he's more of that pick and pop guy. But Jax has that threat too. But I think that'd be dynamic with both of them there. And then hopefully you get that transfer wing that you can throw in there as well. Then off the bench, I want Trey, Kurtang, then Gehrig. Cohen Carr needs to play the 4. And then Coop. I had Coop and Jax, you know, kind of switch in this little exercise here. I switched them both, but I want Jackson that's starting right here. Then Coop right here. And then it can either be Coop or a big rebounding center. You know, like I mentioned, a 7-foot, just, you know, big guy, just come in, you know, clean up the glass, you know, have a presence in the paint for a couple minutes during the game. And if you don't get that center, you hope that Coop takes that leap and can, you know, be that guy for you down there. Then I want to see mixing in Jace Richardson minutes as well. I think they can. Obviously, that, you know, sits you at playing 11, maybe 12 guys. Obviously, you're not going to do that the whole year, but would like to see Jace get some, you know, spin as well. I'm assuming, and I think most people are as well, that Jesse McCullough will redshirt next year. I think this is a roster that can help get MSU back towards the top 3 in the Big Ten as long as the guys take the necessary steps. But obviously the big question is, will Tom actually use the portal? I believe he will from everything I've heard. Doesn't want to use it, but he's not going to be ran out of the game. He's willing to adjust where he needs to, and I think he will. And really, I know this is the second time I'm going to mention them, but go listen to the Locked On Spartans episode with Graham Couch. He mentioned it very well, how he believes that, you know, Tom and staff kind of just, you know, misjudged where this team and, you know, specifically the center position was going to be at. And I think that seems about right. But, you know, obviously we have seen him go in the transfer portal before. His 2 best players over the last 4 years since Cassius and X left the team in 2020 have been 2 transfer portal guys. I guess, you know, you could say Aaron Henry as well. So really 2 of your 3 best players have been transfer portal guys, in Tyson Walker and Joey Hauser. So I believe he will dip in there. Obviously, I think the most important is a wing to help with, you know, wing rebounding and shooting as well. That way you can also slide Jaden back to the 2. We've already seen him reach out to kids in the portal currently, and they're interested in some kids. So with the brand that MSU is, if Tom Izzo is picking up the phone, MSU should be able to land, for the most part, who they want in the portal. But anyway, obviously this was definitely a disappointing year from the program's standards and, you know, where we thought this team could be. There was obviously some, you know, really low points. That buzzer beater at home against Ohio State, which was a week where you had 2 home games that you needed to win before you went to Purdue, and then you ended up losing both home games and you lost at Purdue. That was, for me, that was kind of the low point of the season, besides obviously the last game of the season, you know, losing. But during the season, that was the low point for me. Obviously, the high point, you know, obviously the Baylor game might have been the best that they looked. But for me, I'd probably put the Illinois game as the high point of the season. That was great to be in the Brez, you know, for that this year, and the team really stepped up. You know, pretty much everyone stepped up. That was one of the few games that I said this year where it seemed like they didn't all have great games, but you had pretty much all 4 of your guys, you know, going. You had the other guys rolling as well. But I'm looking forward to it. I think they can have a good team next year. Am I going to say they're going to come into the year title favorites? Probably not. Title favorites for in the country or the Big Ten, no. But depending on who they get, possibly a wing transfer portal if they grab a center as well. This really depends on in my opinion, development, because transfer are just meant to supplement your roster. As we know, we see that basketball and football. It's the development of Xavier Booker. How does Jeremy Fears look? After obviously everything that happened this year, how does he look? Cohen Carr, does he add a jump shot? Can he consistently get rebounds? And can he continue to be that pesky defender that he was at times this year? So what steps does he make? How does Garrick step in? Does he step in and can immediately be kind of a 3-point specialist? Is he going to maybe struggle on the defensive end at first? How does that work? How do you mask that? And then Jaden, can Jaden get back to being consistent as well? The centers, what is hopefully a healthy summer for both Jackson and Carson look? Getting healthy, hopefully adding some more stuff on offense, and hopefully freeing up Jackson next year if he is the starting center. As I said, I kind of pegged him to be. How does that look as well? I'm excited to see that. Books, obviously the biggest name here. We're wondering if he was going to come back, if he was going to transfer, if he was going to try the draft. But I think this year probably your last year with Books, so you really got to kind of capitalize. Maybe you'll come into the year. You'll probably come into the year a little underrated. Not like this year, you're picked to finish top 2. You'll probably come into the year, finish 4-7, somewhere in that range, I think, as of right now. So if you can go into the year and make the necessary adjustments to maybe overachieve a little bit, get a double bye in the tournament, and I think they can get something done, especially with the talent that will be on the roster next year. No matter who they get in the portal, whatever, the talent on the roster will be there. So looking forward to it. But anyway, we'll be back to talk soon. We'll be back to talk about Michigan State spring football, obviously going on for this week 2, not week 3 now, I believe. But we'll be back to talk about that. Spring game, obviously about 3 weeks away now. But thank you all so much for watching. See you in the next one. Peace out and go green.